there's a common belief that everybody thinks the way we do, and that they want to, they want to live, kind of lives we do. So here's some money, here's some troops, let's beat up the bad guys, and just live the way. Here's democracy. But
Yeah.
how about a little bit of the tribal nature of Afghanistan?
Yeah, I talk about that in my book, Game Changers. And I wrote this book, Going Local to Defeat Violent Extremists. I wrote this book not long after I got out. And it was based, Aaron, on the, kind of that realization that we had in 2010. We were losing the war. We had spent the last 10 years really going for retribution and trying to walk the enemy down, living on fire bases, and helping the Afghan government project power from the top down against the Taliban. And it didn't work because, as you said, Afghanistan is 90% rural. It is mostly what they call a status society, which is it's bottom up. Governance, security, economic development are all bottom up, and they're not top down. They don't rely on the government. The government's role and reach really ends where the pavement does. Everything on the other side of the pavement, as you've seen, is really community based, tribal based, and honor based. And it comes from a centuries old code of honor that even you and I evolved from. And so the problem was we went into the country, special forces included, and we did not account for the local realities on the ground. We just went in there thinking Western way of war, top down. I'm from the government. How do you like me so far? And what it did was it actually created an environment where the Taliban were able to come back in the country and point at us and say, look, I told you they were coming for your way of life. I told you they were coming for the Quran. I told you they were coming for the tribal jirga. They want you to vote, and they want the elders gone. And that narrative resonated so deeply with many of the local Afghans that they actually supported the Taliban when ideologically they didn't. And so it was a self-inflicted butt whooping. And then finally in 2010, we said, all right, we need to get back to our basics, we being special forces. And we kind of a modern day Magnificent Seven, we started living and working in these communities bottom up, wearing the local garb, growing the beards out. And the program was called Village Stability Operations. And that's where I met Nizam, actually, the first passenger on the Pineapple Express. But it was a very effective program for about 18 months. We worked by, with, and through. It really created a very strong community-based presence across the country, and frankly was having a profound effect on the Taliban. And then we bailed on it. We bailed on it because we decided it was time to start getting out of the country. We signaled an exit. We pulled out of those villages. And I can speak for me personally, every villager elder that I recruited, except for one, was killed in short order, was executed. And it became for me a harbinger of what was to come. And I left the Army as a result of it. I was selected for battalion command. I turned down 3 in a row until I left the Army because I just could not deal with where it was heading. And I hate it, but I was right. Like, it ended up, what happened with VSO actually happened across the entire country. And so, we didn't understand that country. We tried to put a square peg in a round hole. I don't think we were wrong to be there. I don't think we were wrong to build capacity there, because I think that America has a long history of very successful foreign internal defense in Colombia, El Salvador, Philippines. It is a way of projecting national security that is responsible and builds capacity. And I think it's a solid move, but we didn't even understand the country or our own capabilities, and we tried to force a solution that just wasn't tenable.
Yeah, I try to explain it to some people. They say that we'd been there for over 20 years, and the war was over. So why not pull out? And on the flip side, there, I talk about we had about 2,500 personnel left there, and what about Germany, Japan, Korea? How many people do Italy? How many people do we still have there?
Right.
They're just if nothing else, a deterrent force.
Absolutely. And you got to think too. Yeah. I mean, what happened to us on 9/11? The worst attack in American history. And it came from a safe haven that we had, we had no intelligence on the ground. This is what the 9/11 study found. We had no intelligence on the ground. We had, and even the intelligence that was coming in, we didn't talk to each other as it came in. And we had no partner force to deal with it. The only folks that were actually trying to deal with it was Ahmed Shah Massoud and his resistance. And we blew him off. And then 2 days before 9/11, bin Laden killed him with a suicide bomber because he knew that's where we would go. That's how foresighted Al Qaeda was. And then we go in there, and for 20 years, we swore on 9/12/2001, our generation of warfighters, never again. That will not happen on our watch. We will not allow that to happen. And we did. We went into Afghanistan, and we did keep that at bay. We did build a very robust intelligence capability. We did build a very robust partner force. A lot of people scoff at the Afghan military, and I tell them very quickly, first of all, they lost 100,000 warfighters. 100,000. Like, don't tell me they didn't fight. And yes, they had problems with desertion, and yes, they had problems with recruiting and morale and graft, but it was often because of how we actually stood the Army up, and they have to take responsibility too. Don't get me wrong. But, the Army was 20 years old? The Army hadn't even been in existence before we came into country. So this was a 20-year-old Army, and if you build capacity, like you said, Germany, Japan, it takes a long time. It is a long-term effort. That's why we have special forces. That's why we have expeditionary diplomats. That's why we have Marine small war tactics. I mean, we have this capability, but we just tried to win it on one person's watch, 4 different administrations, And then the final thing I'll say on this, Aaron, to your point about, why worry about it? The war was over. Well, there are 20 plus violent extremist organizations in Afghanistan now who are operating on the bases that we fought on. The son of bin Laden, Hamza bin Laden, is back in the country, and he's married to the daughter of Mullah Omar, Ayman Zawahiri, and Siraj Haqqani. So you tell me, what's happening over there, and the resistance that we still talk to, because we helped a lot of these guys get out of the country. They're telling us that very late stages of attack planning are underway for the United States. And in fact, the operatives for those attacks are already here. So this is pre 9/11 dashboard blinking red again. And most Americans, our politicians, and our leaders in the military are not even paying attention. In fact, we're giving $80 million to the Taliban every week.